My name is Craig Berggold. I am a research assistant at Queen's University, a member of Public Service Alliance of Canada Local 901 Graduate Workers Union, and we're in negotiations and bargaining for a renewal of our contract for TAs, TFs, and research assistants. This is a great opportunity to meet you, Scott and Ollie from Simon Fraser University, and find out about your union campaign for research assistants.
Thanks so much for having us, Craig. Really happy to be chatting with you. So I am a PhD candidate at Simon Fraser University, where I'm doing my PhD in the School of Communication. But more importantly, I am a TSSU member and have been a member through my work as a teaching assistant, a research assistant, and as a sessional contract instructor. And then, of course, I've also helped the union with organizing and stuff.
Oh, great. Great to meet you today. And Scott?
I'm Scott Yano. I'm a teacher in the English Language and Culture program down at Harbor Center at SFU in lifelong learning. And I've been doing that for, 17 years, and was involved in the unionization drive at the beginning for our department. So I've been a member of the TSSU for a long time, and I was one of the chief stewards between 2018 and I guess 2017 and 2019.
So our campaign was called Research is Work. I'm wearing the shirt. And it was a really exciting campaign that was, obviously twofold in the way that many unionization campaigns are. So we were fighting for the rights for research assistants all across the university in all different capacities to be recognized as employees and to be able to join the union. But we were also really fighting for our work to be recognized for what it is, which is work, which is labor, right? Because often, as many of us academic workers know, it can be really messy, and often it's sort of brushed off as like, oh, well, you're a student, so that's not a real job, right? And it is. Research is absolutely work, and it is hard work. So our campaign was extremely exciting. We had over 900 individual union cards signed within like a 3-month time period. We actually got a voluntary recognition agreement from the university where they came to us and said, holy moly, this is a big campaign. You guys clearly need to be unionized. And unfortunately, while that was very exciting for us and something that all of the people and the workers that have been fighting for this deserved, the university went on to violate that agreement a number of times. So we signed that sort of voluntary recognition agreement in December of 2019. The pandemic hit, and the university has been delaying and somewhat dodging us ever since. But we are in collective bargaining right now to negotiate the first ever contract for research assistants at Simon Fraser University with our union. So it has obviously had a lot of ups and downs, but overall it is an extremely exciting time for us and for all research assistants, because we are extremely close to getting what we deserve, which is a legal contract with important protections and rights, and also recognition that research is work.
Great. That's amazing. You guys are doing some amazing work. Scott, what have some of the issues been at the bargaining table that you're trying to get in the first contract?
RAs have a host of problems, but one of the biggest problems is that they're not recognized as a group, and they have no protection against basically anything. We see all kinds of varieties of rates of pay. We see different kinds of work being asked for. We see when I haven't been an RA myself, but while I was chief steward, a member brought a couple of RAs to my office one day, and we, though they weren't members, they were trying to see if there was something that we could do to help them. There were actually threats of deportation. So, like, international students have trouble like this because of the lack of power that they have. So this is the main thing that we're trying to solve in collective bargaining, is bargaining for collective rights that are grievable, and that so people have actual protection against a variety of employers that, I mean, every principal investigator is an employer, and you've got, hundreds and hundreds of them all over the university. So we needed something to protect them. So this is our main goal in bargaining, is to try and achieve some kind of consistency of conditions over all of the population of RAs, who vary. The type of work they do varies so much. So this is a difficulty, but we're trying to negotiate a contract that'll do that.
So at Queen's University, we got our first contract 2 years ago that got kind of rolled into the TA and TF contract, so that they're all together in one unit. In the last couple of years, the university, the employer, started a new designation called a Research Assistant Fellowship, and said that any research work that wasn't employee work was a fellowship. And so people are being offered these fellowships, new students coming to campus, and they don't know the difference between a research assistant and a research assistant fellowship. And sometimes some departments have been worse than other departments, where we had research assistants under the contract, and then over time they were given research fellowship scholarships, they were called, kind of. And so the unit got a little smaller. Ollie, what are some of the stories you're hearing on campus from members? And are there, like, between science and the humanities, how does that break down at Simon Fraser?
Well, I'm really sorry to hear that. First of all, that must be incredibly hard and way for the employer to sort of take advantage of, vulnerable students and members who are maybe new to the university, even new to Canada, and just don't know that this is something that might be circumventing their rights. That's terrible. But unfortunately, it is not something I think that is unheard of at SFU either. So one of the issues that we have had sort of throughout our campaign to unionize research assistants and now to bargain a contract for them has been this consistent argument from the university that, oh, well, that's not actually work and you're not actually employees because this is part of your role as a student, or you're working on your thesis, or you're working on your dissertation. When, of course, we know, whether it's from the humanities to the sciences, people are doing all sorts of research assistant work that has very little or sometimes nothing at all to do with their own personal research work in terms of their academic pursuits. And it should not be a way for the employer and the university to avoid giving you basic worker protections. So for example, we've had a number of stories where you might have a person who's, let's say, working in biology, and they're working in a laboratory where their academic supervisor might be the head of that lab. So they sort of go in on like a 9 to 5, and they essentially put in like 40 hours of work a week, a full-time job. But because the university might be able to sort of say, or attempt to say, that it is related to their academic work, all of a sudden that person isn't an employee anymore. That isn't work that they're doing. We don't need to worry about labor law or protections for them. We don't need to pay them a minimum wage. They don't have to worry about mandatory breaks. And I think for most regular people, that seems immediately absurd. If you're going into a lab doing 40 hours a week, working for someone else's project, and probably not getting credit for it, that's not your dissertation. All that cleaning work you're doing, all that supervising of undergraduates, the publishing and potentially intellectual property work you're doing for your supervisor, that is not your academic pursuit. That is absolutely work. And if they had hired a non-student, it would be a job. So unfortunately, I am very sorry to hear that, but we have definitely experienced that as well.
Convincing people that they actually are working. This is one of the biggest problems in organizing, and what we've found really helpful for us is having so many RAs who are activists going out and who can talk to other RAs knowingly about their work, especially in the sciences, where there's really, it is that research all of their dissertation work is quite focused on, is grant paid and helps the university, and it becomes the intellectual property of the university. So these are kind of things that we're talking about, is that your research is your property and you are turning it over willingly to the university, and you should be paid for that as a employee.
As soon as the research work is being done by a faculty member, everybody gets that it should be paid and that it's part of their job. But if it's being done by someone who is not yet a faculty member, all of a sudden it's not. And that just seems absolutely absurd.
Ollie, what are some of the benefits that a graduate student research assistant would get by being in a union versus not being in a union?
Oh, what benefits do they not get, Craig? So, I mean, one of the amazing things of being in a union is that you essentially get to chat with all of your colleagues. So all of the people who are also doing this work, and say, okay, what do we like about our jobs and we want to keep? And what are the things that aren't working for us? And all of those things that you already like, whether it's like the flexibility or working with, colleagues and friends, or getting to publish, or working closely with your academic supervisor, all of those things are maintained. All of the good stuff stays. But then on top of that, you're also going to get these amazing benefits like, being guaranteed a minimum wage, not having to work more than, a regular 8-hour workday where you are allowed to take a lunch break and potentially a coffee break. Also, really important protections like health and safety. For a lot of research assistants, they could be working, whether it's in laboratories or in the field, where accidents and risks do happen. And you deserve to be protected for that. And you deserve to have access to things like, whether it's EI or WorkSafe benefits. Those are things that are going to be guaranteed and are going to be fought for when you are a member of a union. And not only do you get those sort of really important basic protections, but you also have access not only to the entire collective body of the union, but you have access to representatives who will place themselves in a position where you don't have to personally fight for yourself and negotiate for yourself. So when you do potentially get in an awkward situation with your boss or your supervisor, it's not up to you alone to take it up with them and sort of have this really scary conversation where you might get fired or have your graduate report have weird comments on it. The union is there to do that for you. And often we can do it anonymously, and you can just come and talk to us. You're not going to have to go directly to your boss if you don't feel comfortable. And God forbid something like harassment or threat of deportation happens. You not only have a professional representative to represent you and help you, but you have all of the other workers, and we're going to stand here behind you as well.
Scott, can you tell me a little bit about the TSSU?
We represent TAs and TMs. TMs are the online TAs, basically, and we've been trying to get that name changed for a while. But so tutor markers it stands for, but they're more than markers. Also sessional instructors and graduate facilitators in the library. That was one of the jobs that Allie was doing, who we just recently unionized. And ELC, so the English Language and Culture and Interpretation Translation programs, that's where I am. So we have about, 1,500 members, and then plus the RAs, so we're getting close to 3,000 members. Been around since 1978. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary a few years ago.
Wow. So Ollie, what are some of the stories you're hearing from your research assistants that you're talking to with where things are at with negotiations?
Well, people are really tired and people are really frustrated. I think, one of the things that drives you to unionize is a sense of kind of being mistreated and kind of being shoved aside, right? When you're told enough times, at least by our employer, our university, that no, you don't work for us. You just work in our buildings 40 hours a week and give us all of your labor and your, brain power, but you don't actually work for us. It's pretty insulting, right? And I think it's pretty disempowering. So why don't I have access to basic things like a contract that is signed by my boss that tells me what my responsibilities are? So I think people are really frustrated with the university, who continues sort of time after time to really, generally insult research assistants and say, we know that you make millions of dollars for us and essentially are the people that make this institution function, but we're not really going to give you the time of day. We're not going to live up to the legal agreement that we signed. We're not going to call you employees. We're not going to negotiate for you. And a lot of the conversations that I'm happening is people are fed up and they're ready for a change. And I think that COVID, unfortunately, allowed the university to hide a little bit, right? We couldn't call them, we couldn't show up, so they could sort of avoid us, avoid all the workers, and say, if they didn't respond to our emails, then they pretended we didn't exist. So now that we're heading back to campus, I think we're all really ready to say, enough is enough. You said that you would do this. It is time now to respect the people who make this university function. And those people are the teachers, the contract employees, and the research assistants. So we're really ready to get this contract signed, and our members are ready.
The cost of living is out the roof. We have rents that are completely out of control. And we've been trying to get the employer to understand that that people's living conditions and studying conditions and working conditions are all based on how far that money can go in the outside world. And for RAs, the money is coming from grants, so it is limited by those grants. And the employer seems to be relying on that as a kind of a fence against improvements. But we're looking for hard minimums so that we can work on that. There's no problem paying more than minimums, and we realize that it always depends on the grant and these other things. But we're also looking to get RA work recognized as part of funding for students. And I just came from bargaining, and the employer straight out said, no, it's not part of funding for students. And so, and we can hire whoever we want, and we don't have to hire students. But this is another problem that we have is, it's a part of offers for graduate students a lot of time for their funding. So it gets mixed together with these issues. So we're looking to get some kind of security for students, like as part of their funding, because sometimes their TA ship will go down, and then they'll just top that up with the RAship, or their TA ship goes up, and they'll reduce the RAship to bring it down to another level. So keeping to some kind of decided level so that students can't get ahead. I mean, there's no contingency for students. Like they don't have any savings. So all of these things make it especially necessary for us to organize, get together, bargain together as an entire group to protect ourselves against the living conditions that are out there. And in Vancouver, it's particularly bad. So it's not really a hard sell sometimes for graduate students,
Yeah, I see you, Ollie, shaking your head on that. What are you experiencing, hearing around the cost of living and student working, living, studying? How's that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really rough, right? And I think probably, I'm not sure if Kingston is quite as bad, but I know Toronto, even Ottawa, Calgary, most major cities in Canada are experiencing these struggles. And one of the egregious things that I think students and workers know very well, and the university continues to try to tell us is not happening, which is that they certainly will cite the cost of things getting more expensive when they raise our tuition costs. But when we go back to them and say, hey, we have to pay more now for our rents, for our groceries, for our tuitions, can we have, the tiny inflationary wage increase perhaps? And they say, oh, God, no, that's outrageous. How could you even ask such a thing? So the question of affordability is something that I think is really on the top of everyone's mind. And it is really, really awful because when you talk to people as an organizer, I mean, I think Scott and I, and I'm sure you as well, Craig, like there's no end to the stories of people who are struggling to pay their rents, who are using the food banks on campus. Not that there is any shame in that. Those services are necessary and we need to have them. But if you are working for a multi-million-dollar public institution and you cannot afford to pay your rent or buy groceries for yourself and your family, that is a problem that is the responsibility of these institutions and our public officials to do something about. And if we are going to continue to raise tuition prices without offering, again, the researchers, the teachers, the actual workers who are making these institutions able to operate, if we are not able to make it so that they can live in the cities that they are required to work in, that is a failing of our employers, of these public institutions, and we need to do better. And of course, the workers and the unions, we're pushing for this, but it is absolutely brutal out there for most people, and it is heartbreaking to talk to people.
So in Ontario, we have Mr. Doug Ford,
yes,
Tory premier, conservative premier, who passed Bill 124 that put a 1% public sector wage freeze. So we're currently at Queen's University negotiating with an employer who's locked in to the 1% due to the provincial legislation. Of course, we would love to see Mr. Ford defeated in June 2022, and we would love to see Bill 124 repealed, and that affects all public sector workers here in Ontario. So that's made things extremely hard and more precarious for people. Precarity is not just an economic issue, it's also a mental stress issue. It affects people's anxiety. Poverty affects people, and studying can be very anxious. What are you hearing around mental stress in these times, and what can research assistants, how will they benefit on some of those issues around care? And Ollie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's like such an important point. And I think that obviously affordability, is incredibly stressful. And we have seen a dramatic increase in the struggle for workers and for students of all different stripes in how to deal with that. And unfortunately, as non-unionized research assistants, they, including myself, have no access to things like mental health supports through access to counseling or access to, paid, covered healthcare, whether it's like visiting a doctor or having prescription medication. And of course, those are benefits that are offered to the people that we are negotiating with, and they are denying us those supports that could really help us with these mental health things. And on top of that, there's also a wide variety of non-wage and non sort of like tangible healthcare benefits that we have been pushing for and bargaining that I think our members, and probably your folks as well, really know are important. Things like compassionate leave. God forbid someone is to get really ill or pass away in your family or a close friend from something like COVID, being able to be there for them and take some time off work where you don't need to think about it, you don't need to worry about it, you can just focus on being healthy and grieving and supporting your loved ones. Things like maternity and parental leave. We're all getting older. We might want to have families. It is entirely within your right to be able to do that. So accessing things like leaves, which again, are not paying somebody more money. They're not even paying for them to see a counselor. Those are other types of non-monetary benefits that is really, really easy for the employer to extend to people that they actually appreciate and respect.
So I had a situation where I met a research assistant who was working for their graduate supervisor. And they had a contract to work for their graduate supervisor on some of their supervisor's research. So it wasn't their research. And they had a fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to convince them that they should raise this issue with their supervisor to say, actually, I have been misclassified. I am an employee. There is a contract in place. So one of the things is we need to, at Queen's, we need to educate our academic workers who are research assistants that they are employees. What would you say, Ollie, to that graduate academic worker who feels caught between their supervisor and their employee status?
I'm sorry, that is a really terrible position to be in, and one that you never should have been put in. And unfortunately, to me, that sounds a little bit like they are being denied their rightful rights, protections, and maybe even salary. I'm not sure. So I would really want to sit down with them and say, explain the difference and explain how this new classification was created. It sounds in large part to specifically strip that person and all other fellows of their union rights. And that is a really terrible thing to do. And it is a union busting tactic that is done very intentionally to be able to, over time, pay out less money and really exploit vulnerable people who might not know the difference, who were never told and just sort of got this job. And now, of course, they're trapped because this is their academic supervisor. And it can be so difficult to have those conversations. And you should never be put in a place where you have to have those conversations. And it can be really hard, especially if you have a good relationship with your supervisor, to recognize that it is a terrible thing, because sometimes it's not the faculty member that's done this. It could be that they were told by their admin person, or maybe they were told by their admin person. So I think one of the things that we often talk about when we talk to members is we're not trying to say that your supervisor is a terrible person. We're trying to say they might also be caught in kind of a bureaucratic nightmare, but that still doesn't make it okay for you to be denied your rights and protections for the work that you are doing for that person and for a multi-million-dollar public institution. You should still have access to those fundamental rights that you deserve. And if they aren't comfortable having that conversation, because again, they should never have been put in a position to have that conversation, that's where I'm sure, Craig, you'd say the same thing. We will help them. We will practice with them, figure out what they are comfortable saying, figure out what they're not comfortable saying, figuring out, is a one-on-one conversation with their boss the best way to go, and really work with them privately in the way that they're comfortable to figure this out, because we're here for them. This should never have happened. And this is a union busting tactic to deny them their rights, and they should not put up with that.
You made a really good point, which was that sometimes it's not even the supervisor, it's just the department administrative assistant, because that's exactly what happened to me. Mm-hmm. I was in negotiations as a research assistant at the bargaining table for the first contract. And we asked them for a list of all the research assistants, and my name wasn't on it. And I was like, wait a second, I'm a research assistant. I'm not, yeah. And they were like, oh no, you accepted the contract as a fellowship. And I was like, well, how would I know it was a fellowship? I wasn't given the option.
Yes.
And what happened was I went and visited the department administrative assistant, and the administrative assistant for the department said, we don't provide employee research assistant contracts. We only do fellowships. And so that was something that was a certain amount of education needed to be done with the support staff. And eventually I got it switched over right away. And I had, my supervisor was very understanding. But you're absolutely right. That is what does happen, is sometimes the department administrative assistants or the department heads have policies to limit the number of employees. And so we often get trapped in these difficult positions, and it's unrelated to our PI, either our supervisor or our principal investigator. We always say that the principal investigators, your supervisors, your like employee supervisors, they're trapped too.
Absolutely.
And that the university should be doing more to support them, supporting us. And that, so yeah, that was a really good point. I just wanted to say, yeah, I've been there.
Yes.
I just want to wrap up. I'd love to hear your closing words on what's going to happen next for your group and your union, and any closing words for our RAs at Queen's University.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us. It's always like so fantastic to talk to other folks doing the same work. You know, we're brothers and sisters at these institutions, just in slightly different parts of the country. But for us, I mean, we are, I think, like most of us, back on campus this semester, which is, you know, its own can of worms. But we are excited to be back because it means we get back to organizing. You know, we get to have our feet back on the ground and feeling those things and fighting for the things that we deserve. So tomorrow we are having a big rally for our research assistants to, again, get us all together, get everybody excited and feeling those good feelings of solidarity and collectivity, but also to say enough is enough to the university. And we are going to be having a really big rally to push to get our collective agreement, our first contract for RAs, finished this fall, so that everyone, they deserve those minimum wages, they deserve those hours, they deserve those leaves, they deserve those healthcare benefits. So we are going to be pushing really, really hard. We're really excited to see all of our members again, and hopefully connecting with more folks all across the country, because I'm sure you might have heard as well, but it's not just going to be SFU and Queen's University with unionized research assistants, but RAs all across the country are looking to unionize. So if you are out there and you are an RA, or if you've been mass classified as a fellow, you are not alone. We're in this together, and really excited to be fighting with such amazing folks.
Well, thanks, Ollie. Scott, you have been doing this for a few years. What are your closing words for us?
Well, I think we always have to realize that power gives up nothing without power needs to be met with power. And the only power that we have is our numbers. And we've had 3 strike votes in the past, and we have never won anything without a fight. Unfortunately, it seems like you could use reason. It seems like, you know, the most reasonable argument is going to win. It doesn't. You can only use your collective power to win your rights. And we've learned this over and over and over again. And one great thing about being at a university is that you have a huge brain trust, and you have a big population of motivated, young, like not me, but you know, like we have a union. One the employer said to us one day, you know, wow, we got to get this thing done. I'm not getting any younger. And then somebody on our side said, well, we are, like, we're eternally young. We never get any older. Our members, we stay in this powerful, energetic state for the whole time. So this is an advantage that all workers at universities have, is that you are young, motivated, intelligent, and that will win you contracts, and it will get you some security in this world where the university is making money. Like our university has made a profit this year, and one of the ways that they said they did it was they reduced their instructional costs. And
wow.
So they actually brag about this. We made money by leaning on sessionals. We made money by leaning on TAs and worsening working conditions. So, you know, we are the backbone of the university. We are the university. We never call them the university. They are the employer, and we always have to remember that. So that's what I would say to everybody, is that, you know, get out there, organize, and take what is yours. So
Thank you so much. It's so great talking to you. I wish you all the best tomorrow at your barbecue. Ours is tomorrow and it got rained out and we've pushed it back a week. So good luck getting your first contract. Reach out to Local 901 anytime, and best of luck. And injury to one is an injury to all.
Yes, solidarity
For
forever.
sure.
Thank you so much, Craig.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay, take care.